You know you're dealing with a superstar when they just need one name to describe them. This one is definitely a humble giant. He is from the coastal side of Kenya. His range, his musical range, his intellect, it surpasses every single border or region you can think of. I'm talking about the father, the teacher, the philosopher, the praise and worship leader, the musician, the songwriter, the multi-instrumentalist. This is Webi. Okay, welcome to Unlock Your Soul with Anto Neosoul. My name is Anto Neosoul, and today I'm with one of Kenya's finest male musicians. He's a family guy. He is a great performer. He's a singer-songwriter. He's a church guy. So we're gonna understand a lot of these things. This church guy with like commercial hits. How this connection happens is one and only Webi.
Anto.
What's up? How are you, Webi?
I'm good, man. It's good to be here.
You know, Webi, I was listening to some of your music.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, Webi, what tribe are you? Where are you from?
I'm Taita.
So I'm
Kenyan.
So I was actually listening to music and I thought, are you Burundi for a moment? Because I was listening to one of your songs in the
Lukundo
album.
Yeah.
And I was like, ai, apana, hii ni kama mimbia. It sounded very...
You know the language is it's Bantu, so it's very similar to Kinyarwanda.
Yeah, that's the thing. For a moment I was like, it's been a lie all my life.
Because we say Lukundo, the Rwandans say Rukundo, I believe.
Oh, wow.
And I think even the Burundians say that.
Do you have any Burundian fans just because of...
Possibly, I do. Yeah, because the similarities in the language would probably bring me across that.
That's actually very possible. So, I mean, my first interaction with you was what I thought was 4 years ago. It was actually 8 years ago.
It was.
Guy.
It's been a while. Time flies pretty quick when you're having fun, I think.
My goodness, it's quite interesting. When you won the Kenya Airtel Trace Music Star, and it came with like a huge amount of money, and I think everyone was trying to like count your coins. How are you gonna spend your money? Are you gonna? I mean, it was a very just weird time, but for me, it was interesting to see a Kenyan, and especially someone who I consider sort of doing the same kind of music that I do in terms of R&B, standing out and win that competition.
Right.
Looking back, would you have? Because a lot of times people do competitions and then they wish I never did this nonsense. Right. Do you regret being a part of that competition?
Absolutely not. I think it was one of the most amazing learning experiences for me. I mean, it was the first big local win that I had.
Yeah.
The first win that I had was an international one, which was in 2008, so farther back. So to win something right in the home ground, that came with the trappings of everything that it came with, but also all of the experiences that it came with. That was amazing. So I have no regrets because it added value to me, to put it simply.
But for your win, for me, felt like a validation of the hard work that you've put in, even coming from a family where you guys are quite musical.
Right.
So I've heard that about you. You come from a musical family. I felt like the win, because I'd seen you in the scene, performing the likes of Akina Temi, Chris Adwa. So I really felt it was like a validation of when you work hard, good things happen for you. And not all the time, but that was like a good, I'm getting something. So, but then you've done a lot. Like, I mean, you've done this since you were a kid.
Pretty much.
With your family.
Yeah.
Paint a picture of how that looks like growing up.
Well, the first time I picked up an instrument was 29 years ago. So
Where?
That because I started pretty young.
Yeah.
So I was 10 years old. Yeah, a guitar.
Nice.
And my first influence was my mom because she plays. She doesn't play as much these days, but she was an avid player.
Wow.
And being in the house with someone who plays an instrument, it sort of rubs off on you.
Yeah.
And so I asked her to teach me how to play, and that's where it began for me. I began my love for music at the moment I picked up a guitar, started learning some chords. Got interested in the idea behind songwriting. I really really love the idea of writing a song that moves emotions, that communicates a message, that is creative. And I got that from her. And yes, my family is very musical. In fact, one of the things that I also do right now is I work for a music school that is owned by my aunt. So I work in a family business.
What's the name?
It's called Joy Music and Creative Arts.
Joy Music and Creative Arts. Yeah. Plug in your family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bring your children.
Right. And my specialty is elementary music education for kids between the ages of 3 and 6 years old.
Wow.
And so music has been in my family and continues to be in my family, and it has been a strong influence for myself and many others of my family members, including even my kids now. And what that looks like growing up and coming to this moment is it's sort of formed or influenced a lot of the decisions about how I wanted to live my life. I mean, very early on, I already knew I wanted to spend my life making music. I mean, if I'd never do anything else, I must at least do music. And if I get the opportunity to choose, then music is my first choice before everything else. And so, I mean, even joining that back with what you were saying about the validation with winning a big competition, it kind of was. And another thing that I picked up about that is, you know, in time, even the Bible says time and chance happened to every person.
Exactly.
Time and chance happened to me.
Yes.
And there have been many other incidences or experiences along the way that have been time and chance that are a validation that, I mean, if you believe in something and you stick with it, it does eventually pay off. And it also comes as a full package. It has its great sides and it has its painful sides. And all of those serve to just form the character of who you become eventually. So that's been, in a nutshell, what my experience has been over the last 29 odd years.
Wow. And your family, your kids, have they sort of taken up the mantle? I mean, do they love music? And how is it working with kids? And just, you know, being able to convince, for example, parents like, your kid could be a musician. I mean, this is okay. Don't bring them here as a way of passing off time, but they could be something great. So what lessons are you imparting on your kids? And do you think they will take over as the next, you know, little Webbies?
Well, working with kids is a very interesting experience because you get to see the world through their perspective. And their perspective is very open canvas, if I can call it that. And I think from the educator's perspective, you know, we have a curriculum that we've developed, you know, that is catered to raising young musicians. And for many parents who are our clients, they already see the value because they can see how that affects positively their learning experiences, how it adds balance to them learning in school, you know, textbooks and whatnot, but also having creative expression. And for me, that's something I'm really passionate about because I learned as a child, so I know the value of what it means to start a journey like that early. And with my kids, it's the same thing. However, one of the things that I decided to do as a parent is not to be overbearing. You know, like saying, I'm a musician, you must be a musician. You know,
you didn't do your piano classes this week.
Like you military and whatnot. No. I actually just, mine and my wife's parenting approach is to expose them. So I get them to see the inside of my world when I'm writing a song. In fact, every time I'm writing a song and I'm recording, I get them to be the ones to listen to it first and ask them what they think. So they don't just hear music and appreciate it from a sonic perspective. They also think critically. Oh, that's nice. I like that ad-lib. Or this music instrument sounds really good. Why don't you add this? So we have conversations like that. But they also have other interests that we make room for. So like my oldest is also a fine artist. So she paints, she draws, she makes, and I'm not talking, you know, those caricatures and look weird and you just say,
not the ones of, you know how a parent will love what their child is doing. My child is an artist. Then you show me, I'm like,
where's the head? Where are the eyes?
My child is an I don't think about the teeth, but they all right.
That's why I use the word fine artist. She's a fine artist.
And how old is she?
She's 10 this year.
Wow.
So her and her sister have 2 girls. I'm a girl dad. They both express themselves creatively and they explore all of the possibilities and they are allowed to pick out what is interesting for them, and we make sure they get the opportunity to do it.
Do you feel like you're bringing up these kids based on your upbringing of like you do you, or is this also your exposure to the world? And like me, I'll raise my kids the way we will raise our kids. We have no formula. How did this come about?
It's a bit of both, actually. My growing up, you know, I'm one of the kids, I'd say, who was fortunate to have been given the opportunity to choose. Not everybody says that. For some people, you'll hear their growing up stories where they were told, lazima ukwe daktari.
In African homes, you're
Arts
either
and
a doctor, engineer, lawyer, or a failure.
Pick
So everything else.
And failure is the other category.
Is musicians.
Right? The guys were not given much of an opportunity to decide, I think I want to be a hairstylist, or I want to be a fine artist, or I want to be a DJ. In fact, when we were growing up, those are the things you pick as hobbies, not as careers. So I was exposed to the opportunity of, hey, there's this, or because my family appreciates music.
Exactly.
It was already one of the options on the table.
Yeah.
And contrasting that with people I've met over the years and their growing up experiences, it makes me appreciate what that was, but also to be an advocate for, hey, let kids be kids and let them grow up and be who they're meant to be. Because another very important thing is every child who comes into this world has come for their own purpose.
Exactly.
You're just a custodian.
And
of
also,
their lives.
you were the avenue for them to come here. They didn't ask to be brought here.
Precisely.
So you really have to be careful with these kids. Yeah.
Because the danger with trying to turn them into a little version of yourself is you also pass on your dysfunctions and your brokenness. So they inherit a lot of the fights that didn't even start with them and that have nothing to do with them.
Exactly.
And they're at a disadvantage because now they have to shake that off before they finally discover who they really are and become what they are meant to be.
How do you get to this place of realization? Wow. I mean, you're not an old dad. You're a young dad. You and your wife are like, you're young people. So how do you get to a place where you sit down and you decide, now this is how we're going to raise our kids?
Right.
Or, babe, you know me, I went through this. You went through. How do you get to this place?
Well, a lot of it is allowing room for self-awareness. We recognize that every person is coming from somewhere. We all have our backgrounds, and our backgrounds present us with a mix of two things. All of the great experiences and some of the difficult ones. And then again, in a marriage setting, like in my case, these are two different backgrounds. And some of the challenges that we experience, because marriage also has its difficulties, a lot of that is founded on what your belief systems are, who you are, what you think about the world, what you think about money, so on and so forth. And so we both had to come to a place where we sort of asked and answered the question, what kind of family do we want? And also, what does that mean for how we're going to raise our kids and who do we believe they can be?
Wow.
And what does it mean for us investing in them becoming that way? And of course, it's not something that, we can pride ourselves in and say we're just such great thinkers and we came up with this. To be honest, we fumbled a lot. We fumbled a lot, and also becoming self-aware of who we are and why we are the way we are and why we do the things that we do, and weighing that honestly, objectively, and being able to have conversations about it has helped us realize, okay, so this is why I do the things I do, and this is why I think the way I think. So this is also why I believe what I believe. What is an alternative perspective to this? If I'm raising a child, what do I really want them to believe, or what kind of foundation do I want to put in place for them to even form their belief system? We can only give them the training they need to be functional in a world, the world that they're going to function in eventually. But we want to make sure that they have a strong enough foundation for them to also find their path, not give them a fight they have to win first. Before they discover identity
and you're the fight. So these kids have to grow up saying, I don't want nothing with my father because that guy what he made me go through. So while you're here trying to mold a world for them, but you're busy being, you're a Trojan horse. You're the one who's bringing problems in their lives. Does religion or spirituality play a huge role in terms of how you want these kids to end up and in terms of how you bring them up?
Absolutely. I'm a Christian. There's these denominations and whatnot, and people say I'm either Catholic or I'm a Protestant
or Pentecostal.
But
I never get those things. So are you Pentecostal or Baptist? And I'm like, huh? I don't know which one I am. Then I'm like, do you speak in tongues? I'm like, I don't know which one. I go to church.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm a believer. I love Jesus. And spirituality and being a believer has definitely played a huge role, an influencing role in how I raise my kids. Because first of all, I was raised in a Christian family myself. And a lot of my belief system, the foundation of that was laid on by my mom. I say my mom because my father wasn't in the picture.
Okay.
And that's a story for another day. But I think one of the most amazing things to discover out of spirituality and how that applies practically in everyday life is, in Proverbs it says, 18 verse 21, by the way, Proverbs 18 verse 21, I believe, train up a child in the way they should go. When they're old enough, they will not depart from it. So that becomes the starting point of, okay, so what does training up a child really look like? How was I raised? And the world that I was raised in, do those lessons apply in the world that I'm raising my kids in today? What changes do we need to make? And what does that look like in terms of the intersection between their practical experience and their spiritual experience? My desire is that, of course, they continue with the legacy of, Christian faith, right? But if they should decide to have a different pursuit,
Yeah.
let it not be because there was a gaping hole. Let it be because they have a conviction in them that allows them to make an informed decision.
Exactly, yeah.
So that the conviction stands against every other influence.
Well, that's powerful.
Right?
Yeah.
So as a believer, it's what was also God's prescription of how our children are supposed to be raised. Because remember, I said we are just custodians of these people, right? Every child that comes into the earth is coming to fulfill a purpose. Whose purpose? God's purpose. So what is my role? My role is to partner with God to help them become everything they're meant to be.
Wow, I like that.
So what's God's idea behind parenting? You know, it's to love them. It's to be there for them. Again, you know, God himself has set sort of like a template for how he treats us. You know, he provides for us. He cares for us. He heals us. He hears our prayers. He's available. Now, of course, we're not gods, but the principles that stand in how he parents his children in the world is what we borrow from. You know, so teaching them love, teaching them inclusivity, teaching them sense. Because again, faith is not the substitute of practical wisdom and personal responsibility.
Exactly.
What does that look like in the context of faith and whatnot? So in summary, with all those words, that's essentially how faith influences my parenting approach and many others who believe the things I believe as
I love that you said partnering with God, because I mean I've never heard anyone say that I partner with God. I'm like, that's powerful. I know you said there's a story for another day, but I just feel like the audience will be like, I'll be amiss if I don't do it.
It's all right.
There's the issue of when you talk about your father and saying that, you know, he was in the picture. I mean, explain to us why he wasn't in the picture. But then also, how are you able to father when you don't have a father to look up to and say, this is the way that I was told that things should go? Does it sometimes, you know, do you look back and just feel like some FOMO of sort of like, oh, now I'm in this scenario and I don't know how this is supposed to be done?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And yes, it's okay to talk about that because, I mean, it's part of my story and I cannot I cannot divide it and cut it out. My parents divorced when I was 6 years old, so about the age of my youngest child right now, which is interesting to see that full circle. Right? And it was unfortunate because their marriage didn't work because they didn't know what they were doing, and there was a lot of course correction that needed to happen in their space that didn't happen. So it ended up being the demise of the marriage. That's how they got there in summary. But my mom, and of course, shout out to mothers, by the way.
Hey, moms.
You guys, like, I don't think there's any award on this earth that is enough to appreciate mothers who stick with it, you know, especially for mothers who have multiple children and then now they find themselves in a single parent situation. And they stick it out because that's hard. That's really hard. And I'm appreciating that.
I mean, even
more.
when they're adults, they're human beings. They could be like, me, I've given back to you. Bye. I've left you the show. You live your life now.
In most cases, they stick with it. They're the ones who become the backbone. They're the ones who end up becoming the quote-unquote mother and father.
Like mother and dad,
which is what happened in my case. You know, after the divorce, you know, we even moved across counties. We went to live in Mombasa for a good part of our growing up. And he wasn't in the picture because his life was here and he stayed here and he moved on.
Wow.
And the effect of that was a gaping hole where a father figure should have been. So there's a lot that I didn't know about what it looks like to have a present father in the house. And what a man is supposed to be, because now as a guy, that would be my role model. That's my first point of reference. But what I'm grateful for is I had uncles. I had uncles who were sturdy, they were strong, they had families and they were with their families. And they were all sort of part of the community that raised us. My granddad as well, who was so much like a father to me than my grandfather and my siblings as well. And what that painted a picture of was what it looks like to have men stand up and step into their role and
be
do
counted.
Their best. And also be honest about the humanity, the limitations of their humanity, the mistakes they made. They tell stories. My granddad was one of my best friends. He's gone to be with God now. But he was very honest about some of the struggles he experienced, some of the challenges he experienced. He raised 9 kids.
Wow.
So my guy, he has a whole book.
There's a whole book. And in those days, without any social media, without any agency, you're on your own.
Exactly. And also working in different places within the country and, you know, sort of providing for a large family and being responsible and putting in the work. And what that gave me an idea of was what it looks like. Of course, it doesn't answer every question. It just gives me a starting point. So the older I got, I now started to ask the questions that were, of course, relevant to the maturity level I was at. I sat down with my father for the first time when I was 22. That's a good number of years now.
Yeah.
And we tried to work things out. But admittedly, I went there very angry, very charged.
Yeah.
Self-esteem issues. There was a whole growing up.
Yeah, I was like, I'm going to war.
Yeah.
WWE, I've been waiting for this day. I'm about to undertake this guy.
And it fell apart very, very badly. But then now it led to a whole 12-year gap of us being, adverse to each other.
Gosh,
And then we sat again. This time round, I took the initiative and I extended an olive branch. We sat down in 2018, and we had a few months of cordial relationship and whatnot. But then, at this point, I'm much older, and we're able to have a much more civil conversation and try to understand things in retrospect. And I realized that at the point where I'm at and where he's at, we both didn't want the same things.
Yeah.
And he wasn't particularly interested in building a relationship from that as the starting point.
Yeah.
And so, it fell apart, but it fell apart like, let's just mutually agree.
Like amicably, like, you know what?
Yeah.
You're my dad.
He didn't like it.
But this is not what,
But I had to make the decision because I realized that now as an adult and also raising children, I don't want to create a situation where they go through the same thing I went through within the context of a grandfather. And
thank you.
Because
if you now introduce them into his life, there's things, and they'll say, you didn't protect me. Like, why would you allow me to be someone who's bad mouthing you, or probably he's not interested, or the way he speaks around us? Because remember, you've laid this foundation for your kids, only for you to expose it to someone who you're even trying to understand.
Exactly.
And he's been himself. He's
precisely.
Probably bringing shows around, and you're like, I don't want my kids to see this.
I think the place where there was a broken link in the chain is that he didn't necessarily want to do the hard work of building a relationship with me. He sort of wanted to start afresh with my kids. Yeah. Which is cute. Yeah. But it is dysfunctional.
Exactly.
Because in the long run, you can't sustain that. And anything that you don't address shows up again later.
Exactly, yeah.
And because of the time we're living in, it would have evolved into something far worse.
Yeah, far worse.
Because now he's not dealing with the child me, he's dealing with the grown-up me and the children that came from. So if it was a non-negotiable for me, an irreducible minimum. If we're not going to do the work of building a relationship and hopefully starting from somewhere, and then now allowing that to spill over into the future generation, then I'm sorry, that's not gonna work.
It's funny. It's interesting to see that because you know how granddads and grandmoms treat like kids way better.
Yeah.
So I remember asking, my mom and my dad, why are you guys so lenient with I've got a nephew and a niece, Leroy and Leanne. I'm like, why are you so lenient with this?
Yeah.
And they're like, listen, you guys were the investment.
Right.
They are the return on investment.
Absolutely.
So there's no way he can be enjoying
a return on an investment
that he did not invest in.
Exactly.
So it's like, bro, before this, let's first deal with me, because tomorrow I'll see you with my kids, and then I'm having a bad day because I've just seen you.
Right.
And before I realize I've lashed out at you, and it can even create someone who you're not. But it's funny because even you're the second person I'm interviewing today, and that I'm having a conversation with today.
Yeah.
And I realize that everything I've been planning to speak with them, it's all changed. Because there's certain honesty that comes with just, opening and having a conversation.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's very deep, because a lot of times it always feels like we should move on.
Right.
When our parents or whoever, one of them wasn't there, we should just move on. Like, man up and move on.
Yeah.
Well, you also say as a man that I don't want to be in a position where I am also hurting him by being here, and I don't want to be here. And also, he's not ready, I'm not ready. And it's okay. And we're not saying it's okay for people to be in dysfunctional families.
Right.
But when it's not working, I think
I think you owe it to yourself to understand where things are, because the fairy tale ending is a bit of a high expectation to sort of try to live up to.
Yeah.
It sometimes works, and when it does, people are much better for it, because now they have hindsight, they have the benefit of every wisdom they've gained from their experiences.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is that it doesn't work out.
Yep,
it doesn't work out because people are in different places in their lives.
Yeah, these are storybook settings,
Yeah, no
the
one
real
is
world,
perfect.
nope. Yeah.
No one is perfect, and no one no one has it together all the time.
Yeah.
And it's okay to sort of realize, and I think this is where we get to learn how to draw boundaries, which is one of the things I've gained as wisdom or as knowledge to help me navigate through life. Where if someone is not willing to either, be part of the solution and define a boundary and sort of create the metrics within which we can navigate our relationship, you do that for yourself, because you cannot relegate that responsibility to someone else.
Yeah.
So I made the decision that, this is my bare minimum, and these are the boundaries within which everything is going to happen. And of course, it sounds punitive because it's like it's on my terms.
Yeah.
But the reason why that is the case for me is because growing up, I've had to formulate how my life is going to go, and also I've had to sort of try to find replacements to fill the gap. And I've picked a lot of lessons from all of them. Yeah. And my thing is, I want a relationship. I don't just want a situationship. I don't want just somebody to be there for the sake of being there. And even about grandfathers and grandkids, grandparents and grandkids, is that, now they're much older.
Exactly.
So they have calmed down. They're not in the hassle of raising children anymore.
They can't chase you and beat you up anymore. No. They'll just sit there and watch.
They have a very different perspective on life in their legacy years. Yeah. And so they see grandchildren as a second chance at being the best version of themselves that they could have been when they were younger, didn't have the wherewithal. And so I understand that, because even my grandparents were the same with me. How my granddad was with me was not the way he was with his sons, my uncles, But those are two different versions of the same person.
Exactly.
You can't expect
the
same. And this older version would usually be a much more refined, fine wine sort of, individual, right? Yeah. But again, it's still the same person that was young once. And whatever dysfunctions were never addressed then are still there now. They just wear a different face. Yeah. And those are the things that I didn't want passing on, because one of the things I've also come to learn is every generational dysfunction that doesn't get addressed at a certain point, it evolves and becomes worse in the next generation.
Say it really again. Does. Say it again one more time.
Yeah, every generational dysfunction that doesn't get addressed at a certain point, it evolves when it gets passed on and it becomes significantly worse. Yeah. And so now you can imagine how whatever dysfunctions I've had to fight to overcome, and I'm still overcoming even until today, what would that look like for my kids? Yeah. I'm already dealing with the fight of addressing myself.
Exactly.
I don't need to have someone else passing on extra.
Exactly.
Like I can't catch all those flies
exactly,
at the same time.
Yeah. And also not in my timing. Like not now. I'm trying to raise kids. I'm not going to now again.
And it's a significantly harder time. We're raising children in a much more complicated world than the one we grew up.
These kids have, your granddad could literally have a connection with them, and you probably don't even know.
Exactly.
Like they probably have a phone.
Yeah.
The granddad finds a way to talk to them, and they're feeling like, I want to have a relationship with my guka. Yeah. So they're probably then behind your back.
Of course.
And you're like, it's a 10-year-old. How did her and the grandfather decide to conspire? So you see now it brings another issue of boundaries. Yeah. And before you realize, and then your kids now are blaming you. You don't want me to have a relationship. And you're thinking, no, I am saving you.
Precisely.
I am not taking away from you.
And
it's not easy.
And a lot of the lessons they'll begin to appreciate when they are older. Right now, they're still really
They will
young.
not,
Yeah, but the thing that was really important for me to have all of this happen was also just to resolve the loose ends in my life, you see, because, like you said something a little earlier that was interesting, man up and whatnot. Yeah. I grew up asking the question of what a man is. Who is a man? What does a man really do? When we say man up, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Because in the African context, and I think even world over, it's just different depending on culture. Yeah. A man is just a functional being.
Exactly,
your kids get unconditional love, your dog gets unconditional love.
Thank you.
Other people get unconditional love, but a man is...
But a man, no.
You're only a man if you're providing and providing financially.
Yes.
A man is just the person who makes sure there's a roof over your head and so on. Yeah, but a man is so much more
provides.
than that.
Your job is just
to provide
ATM, provide whatever, whether it's a provision or money, you just bring.
And to the best of
the
your
rest,
ability,
no, we're not interested.
Alleviate problems and pain for everybody. But
and deal with it.
Yeah.
Like stop complaining, don't
figure
it out.
But you see, the truth of the matter is a man is a human being, and he has questions, and he has gaps, and he has insecurities, and he has fears, and he has a need to be accepted, and he has a need to find his place. He has a need to have an identity. Those are the conversations that don't get had, and so you find a lot of well put together men who are working with very broken souls, and they never realize that there's a place where this can be healed. There's a process I can go through. I can be myself. I can allow myself to break so I can be made get back into a version of myself that can actually sustain and navigate through life. And so those are some of the things that I got into the process of that brought me to the place where now I would be talking with you and saying, I needed to deal with the brokenness of my growing up. I needed to resolve the issues of what happened. Your dad was not in your life. What did that look like for you? What happened to you? What did you struggle with? What were some of the things that ended up becoming that shouldn't have, or that shouldn't have become, so on and so forth. And in my dad's generation, for example, those are not the conversations they're having, nor are they willing to have them, because they were also raised by a generation of men who were all about a particular way and perspective of life, right? So in their defense, to be honest, to balance the scales, they also really didn't know what they were doing. However, what I've come to appreciate is that's never an excuse. We are able to learn. I mean, if I've been able to figure out to some degree, so a dad is somebody who loves his kids, and you're there for them, and you can be emotionally available. You're not just always shouting orders. You can actually listen to them. You can hear where they're coming from. You can speak wisdom into them. You can speak truth to them in love. So that's what a man does. Okay. Those are things that I am learning now. And I'm learning from the point of a need I also had that never got met. Them, they're not willing to have that conversation. Because for them it was...
And also an accountability. Because I really believe that people know good and bad, wrong and evil. We do. So if I decide, for example, to scold or, really hurt my child, I know what to say to hurt my child. I know if they failed in their English last term, I know exactly the ones to make them feel small. Let's not pretend like I don't know how to raise my kids. It's just nobody comes with a manual, but you write it along the way. But there are chapters I don't want this to be a part of it. So why are you writing the chapter? Why are you making it a part of the story? We just know. And the thing with another thing about accountability. Because the last time I spoke with Rick Spoit, and the thing is, we're having a conversation about how parents don't want to be accountable to the wrongs they did, and that's why in our generation, like us millennials, we'll keep reminding them, no, you're not gonna go there until you address that thing. And the moment you call them out for it, that's why you'll have a dysfunctional. Because now I won't talk to you. This boy is very rude. I've tried to even become his friend. And you're like, no. You're refusing to listen to that part where I'm telling you, I felt hurt by X. I felt you did my mom wrong like this. Now you don't want to own up to those things. And I'm saying, I don't want to move and raise my kids with that heaviness. And if I will do that, then you cannot be in the picture. So decide.
So even looking at it from the family setting, I'm realizing now, I think, from a society perspective, there's a very huge need, a necessity, if I can say, and a place for families and family members to have honest conversations about, the circumstances of their relationships, to make amends where things were broken. Like, I find there's so much to gain and so much value in people being able to let their guards down, to address things that have been age-old wounds that were unresolved, to say, hey, I'm sorry, I really didn't know what I was doing, forgive me, can we try again? You'd be amazed how, like, for instance, with everything that happened in my case, when I sat down with my father both times over the span of 12 years, the only thing I honestly wanted him to say was, I'm sorry. I didn't care about the fact that he was physically abusive or that he was absent or so on and so forth, because there was a lot that happened there. The only thing that I went there to hear was, I'm sorry, son. And can I make it right with you? Can we start from here? Can we start over? So you can imagine if families would have conversations like that, fathers, mothers, because there's also dysfunctional situations where mothers are concerned. And of course, for mothers, you don't hear that conversation on the top so much, because mothers are usually the ones who sort of bridge the gap. And they're the ones who are emotionally present, and they play a role that only they can play. But they're human beings as well. So a lot of the ills that we see in society today, a lot of the brokenness or the dysfunction, it starts in the home. I mean, charity begins at home. And also because people are trying to figure out how to do this thing, and they're so focused on the struggle of getting it right that they forget to leave room for learning. And then later on, and they realize they made many mistakes, instead of acknowledging, okay, I could have done this better, or you know what, I should have thought about this, or we could have had a conversation about this sooner rather than later. They're like, but I provided for you.
You why
I paid your fees.
These things are old things.
Do you know that? Do you know what I had to go through? From a children's perspective, I never asked for any of that. And I also never asked for the brunt of all the pain that you had to go through. Like, it wasn't my fault, right? So having these conversations conversations is really important.
And why am I paying emotional dowry price?
Exactly. It's for something
I did this for you.
Yeah.
So you paid this for you. Why am I paying this price?
So it's important for there to be spaces available for people to converse, because the truth of the matter is healing has to happen. If we're going to have a different sort of scenario for generations going forward, it has to start from the place of healing. It has to start from the place of honesty, and it has to start from the place of belief and faith as well.
Yeah.
You know, whatever your faith is, I think all faiths have one thing in common, is the belief in good.
Yeah.
And I think healing is a good thing.
Wow.
Right? And if healing is a good thing, why not make it a priority and pursue it and make it sort of a cornerstone in our family setups? I think it answers a lot of some of the things that we're struggling with today, whether it's in government, whether it's in the private sector, whether it's arts and entertainment, you know, whether it is in the education sector. A lot of the questions that we tend to ask at that macro level sort of begin at a micro level, but we're not really addressing the micro situation. And we think, which is why we keep having the same problems year in, year out. They just evolve over time because of technology.
And especially like time of Corona, things were brought up. People realize at homes they can't stand each other. They cannot sit in the same house.
Yes.
They realize, hey, this guy has been actually a functioning alcoholic. This guy drinks this much.
Imagine
like
that.
My parents actually were divorced. They just stay with us here because there's no way they're together.
The pandemic.
But the more I hear that, and I was about to ask you about your life as a musician before and after the pandemic.
We can get to that.
But you're very insightful, but you don't do media interviews, and that has really bothered me, because when I go even online, and I know you as a friend,
right?
But when I go online, I'm like, hiya, this guy does not talk. He does not give people. You're very reserved. Yet, even in the spaces that I've seen you, whether it's in church or whether you're on TV or whether I've seen you on stage, you always have a word to say. You're not just going through life, like your stuff. Why is it from a mental health perspective where you do not put yourself out too much, or why do you feel the need to guard yourself?
Well, there's a couple moving parts there. So let me come from the media point of view. For a long time, I mean, okay, perhaps maybe a good background is I first stepped into the art and entertainment space professionally 20 years ago today. 20 years ago this year.
Wow.
So that's 2003.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, my brother.
It's not a joke.
It's not small feat. So 20 years in this thing has given me a front row seat to so many different experiences. And I've been in many interviews, consequently. And I've had very many different conversations. But beyond a certain point, the questions became sort of repetitive, and they were limited to a very small section.
It's very mediocre sometimes. And that's why I'm doing this podcast, because the idea of people being asked, what's your favorite color? I mean, I'm like, how is that an interview? We had you driving a Mercedes.
Right.
I'm like, what is that?
Who are you dating?
Who cares? What is that? So how do you and your wife, do you fight? What? Why do you have to be negative? Can we just have a normal conversation?
But Anto, I mean, to give credit to everyone who has ever spoken to me on an interview, they have allowed me to be able to share, tidbits of information that, talk a bit about what I'm doing behind the scenes and how I got to where I'm getting, or how I got to where I am at those different points. And it has also given me the opportunity to share my views and my thoughts about different life experiences and topics and so on and so forth. I've always believed that, media interviews, whether TV, radio, or any other way, is supposed to be a spotlight, sort of shine a light into the behind the scenes, but how that applies to someone listening to the interview, because I think they're supposed to be able to get something out of it, maybe gain some insight, but also see, maybe that's a perspective I can learn to appreciate, because I didn't think about things that way. Or I didn't know that, this exists. I've learned something new. And also it allows them to see the creative process of what you do that helps them get to be on the other end of you putting out a new song or a new video and so on. So we tend to have, and I think this has been my experience with no shade, directed at anybody in this in the media space. We tend to do interviews really just to fill a slot. We're having this artist from this time to this time, so we kind of need just ask questions. We just need to have them on for this. Then throw in a song, perform, and then that's it, and we move on. And it becomes a little generic. And the problem with it being generic is now the people who are listening are gaining nothing. So the next time they know you're going to be on an interview, they won't listen because they know they can anticipate what you're going to say, because you're going to be asked the same questions. So interestingly, over the last maybe 5 or so years, there have been very few media interviews that I've been on. Primarily, out of choice. It's not even so much about mental health. It's just I would much rather be on an interview or in a space where I'm having a conversation that can be shared with the masses that has substance. I have something to say, and I feel like I have something to contribute that builds somebody else's life or gives them some kind of value.
Yeah.
Some kind of value.
Yeah.
And in every space where I have been, whether that's on stage, whether that's working with kids, whether that's being in church, because I do serve in church. In fact, in church right now, I go to Mavuno downtown in Nairobi. And one of the things that I do there every single Sunday is I lead the children's worship experience.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I've been a music director there. I have worked with teams, professional musicians. Now I'm working with kids, and that's the other spectrum of everything.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for how do I contribute what I have that can build somebody else's life, a child's life in a way that is positive and also reflects my faith and reflects what I believe is Christ-likeness. And the reason why I haven't done as many interviews really is because I'm looking for spaces where those are the kind of conversations we had. I mean, like for instance, this conversation.
It's really so it's uninterrupted.
Deep,
because that's the thing, and that's why for me I'm doing podcasts, because for someone who's done radio, I know what it means when someone tells you, "Oh, you guys are going overrunning." I'm like, how do you overrun?
It's
substance?
limited,
How do you overrun content that people want to hear? And so, and what happens over time, like you're saying, audiences shift. Because they just feel like, you know what, I'll just go to YouTube and I'll go listen to Andrew Tate. So there's nobody to tame the Andrew Tate-ness. Because I mean, that's all they can see. Well, here, the platform or the opportunity for us to hear those kind of stories are being told, no, we don't have the time. So it's quite sad. And in the same breath about time, you seem to have a lot of time with kids. And the thing when you're able to work with kids, it means kids love you. I feel like kids you're really good with kids.
Well, I think it's been
because kids are a lot.
Yes, they are.
But they're only a lot when you're watching from outside. When you're with them, you realize, guy, how has time gone? Why am I losing weight? They have made me run. Kids are beautiful.
I think my perspective on kids has shifted because I always believe they're a lot of work and they're complicated and they're all these things. But I was a kid once.
Until you spend 8 hours with them and you're like,
I was a kid once.
How did I do 8 hours with this?
Exactly.
These small
rascals,
rascals. They have bribed. They have your cheats.
Here's the thing that I think the perspective that helps center me, I think, is one. I think of myself and I'm like, I was a kid once, and someone invested in me. People, a whole village, and communities, as it were. But what I have really appreciated about spending time with kids is their worldview. Because it's so unadulterated, untainted. They have their opinions, they have their honesty, they have their expression, and they're all so vastly different. And being able to in fact, here's another very wonderful thing about them is when I'm teaching them, the strongest thing I could ever do is simplify any concept. If you can teach whatever concept simply to a child in a way they can understand, then it means you also understand it very well. And the beauty is you get to realize that every person, even the adults, has a child in them. And there's always something that you can speak to that speaks to that child in them. I mean, you're a 50-year-old human being and you do the things that you do. But a lot of those things were founded or put in you or became part of your composite, let me put it that way, when you are a child.
Exactly.
So if, let's say, for instance, you are an overachiever, maybe it's because as a child you felt you needed to prove yourself, you needed to let others know that you belong, I've got something to contribute, and that never got spoken into, and you carried it over all the development seasons of your life.
And now it's creating, yes, you're an overachiever, but you're not. You probably don't work well with teams or with groups. You don't take instruction well.
There's a lot of carnage.
A lot of carnage. It's just like, no, I will destroy everything so I can be seen. Or destroy relationships just so I can be felt like I was number one. Well, now you're learning, no, relationships are important.
Precisely. And also just the opportunity to love them in its purest form, that sincerity. They teach me sincerity.
Kids,
they teach me,
God.
And they also test my patience, because the thing is, they're pushing all the boundaries. They're discovering a lot. They're asking many questions. They're trying to figure out, how does this work? What happens when I press over here?
Exactly.
And even just getting to know their personalities and figure out what is the best way. Each child has a specific learning style, for instance. So you're figuring out what is the learning style of this one.
It's interesting you say that, because I have had a scenario with kids. My mom has a school.
Right.
My mom tells us to say it's our school. So we own our school. It's called Fairville in Donholm.
Yeah.
So now there's 3 instances. One, when this happened yesterday, so I was told these kids who are in PP1.
Yeah.
And these PP1 kids are the rascal. These kids are adults.
Right.
Hey, they're like 70-year-olds in a way.
In 6-year-old bodies.
Guy. So now I'm there telling them, hi. Have you... And they're about to sleep, so I realized I'd messed up because now I just got them when they're about to sleep. They're like, hi. They're all of them. And they were happy. They don't want to sleep.
Yeah.
They're like, hi.
Yeah.
You people, you don't miss me. I've missed you.
Yeah.
We've missed you.
And that became...
Then one of the kids said, Baba. Everybody, all the just came out. I told them, I'm not your father.
But that's what
that kid called me Papa.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm not your father. Then all of them, because they realized now, say I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They also started saying, Baba. I told them, go back to sleep. I am not your father.
And the Baba in you came out.
The same class, PP1, another time I'm walking, they were having lunch. So I have like a puzzle, I'm hiding. I don't want them to see it.
Right.
Because if they see it, they'll now ask for it.
Yeah.
But they thought it was food. So I was walking close to them. I'm like, you guys, why have you not finished eating?
Yeah.
Then one kid says, we want to eat that. So I'm like, what?
You are eating now.
What you're carrying. This is a PP1 kid.
Right.
Telling me, what am maswali mingi.
Yeah.
Iyo kitu umebeba.
Yeah.
What you're carrying is what we want to eat.
Be generous.
Another time was, these kids were going for... They're going to play. They're going to slide, and some of them were taking too long. So some kid called Precious. Asked Precious, you finished? Why are you not sleeping?
Yeah.
No, we're supposed to go to the slides. Just said if we finish, we go to the slides.
Right.
But this have not finished.
Yeah.
That meant I'd given her agency to tell them to finish.
Yeah.
So she turned to the other kids.
Yeah.
And said, the plate was close to the kid and pushed it close to him.
Yeah.
Finish your food. Finish your food. It's like no one has been telling her.
Yeah.
The reason why you're not going is because of this kid.
Yeah.
Me innocently, I just said, but they've not finished. And she's oh, that's why. Yeah. Finish your food.
You contextualize the situation.
But you can imagine for those kids, and when you learn that, when I look back at the scenario, no hate, no ill intent, no shade. This, if it was in a place where there's like context of like older people, you just know there was some shade thrown there. There was some brought up things from behind. These kids are just doing it in love. A kid calling you Baba, and then the rest decide, he's making him uncomfortable. Let's all call him Baba. Just that non-pretentious thing about kids. And it's also very fulfilling when you see a kid now being able to write better or read better. And you feel you've opened up something, a switch.
Absolutely.
So now on the flip side, when you don't do that, and that's why people wonder when we have our traumas. Because we're like, by the way, there's things that are bugging me, or I'm behaving a certain way. Because you refuse to turn on that switch. Instead, you dimmed it, or you locked it, or you just allowed it to run without telling me these are the ways to go. And that's. I mean,
and this is the reason why I was saying it's important to not gloss over that, because whatever it is that we're glossing over gets repeated. Whatever doesn't get addressed gets repeated. And having conversations and being open to understanding, hey, I got here from somewhere, and along the way there were some pit stops. Some of them were great, some of them were not. That is something that becomes necessary for the kind of conversations we have next, for the kind of narrative we have next, for the generation we are raising and how they will function in the world they show up in. And the pandemic, like you mentioned, was a really good opportunity for us to face ourselves, because now we didn't have anywhere to go, and we couldn't keep running away from everything. We hide behind busyness, and we hide
laptops and whatever,
and we hide being away. Now you're with your kids, you begin to realize you don't know them, you don't know the person you married anymore, because things have changed.
Or you realize that your spouse works really hard with these kids. When they ask for homework or whatever, now you know what it means for these kids to do their homework. And what it takes to center them, and what it means, what kind of environment it is you guys actually have that you don't realize much about because you're not always there. And now we had to face ourselves, like that's pretty much how it was like. The pandemic, and how that sort of intersects with music. I mean, and even with you, I want to know how that was for you, like when now you're in the thick of it. What's happening?
I mean, one of the things that I wanted to spend a lot of my time doing was, whether it's writing songs or practicing, because now we have all this time. We couldn't go out to play shows, so we're trying to figure out how to play shows online. But I had to split, I say had to operatively, but I had to split my time between still pursuing my creative enterprise, but also being a family man. Because at this point I had children also, and I'm married still, and we're now in each other's space all the time. There's no, I need a break, I need to go breathe somewhere else.
Let me go.
Let me go.
Let's go rehearse.
Yeah. Nope. No. Now you guys are in the thing.
Yeah.
And what that I think it forced in a good way to reevaluate, what is this thing that I'm doing? What is it really about? Because you can't get lost in just chasing something because it's a passion, because you like it, or because you've done it for a long time. Now it needs to answer the question of what does it build to, what is my driving? Why do I get up in the morning? Why do I play music instead of going to learn some other thing? I went to school, I did marketing. Why am I not figuring out how to pursue a career in marketing and not music? Or where am I suffering myself when things could be easier? And what is it that I want out of life? And in the next few years, should we make it past this situation? What kind of life do I want to look like? What are the things that are going to be important for me? And how do I prioritize them? Those are some of the things that especially throughout 2020, we were starting to ask ourselves these things. I was starting to learn about the reality of life from that perspective. And so even after the shutdown and life started to sort of come back together, it became about building a life that prefers those things that became important for me. For me, it was rest. It was time to be with the people that matter, to invest in the things that are valuable. It wasn't just the hustle and bustle. Real talk. As a musician, you want to find a way to make the thing work for you. You want the music to work. You want to make money.
Gigs every weekend. That would be perfect scenario,
Exactly. You want an illustrious career. You want it to be for something. You want it to amount to something. You want it to have impact. But for that to happen, there needs to be some things you put in place. What are those things? And for me, it was, I want to continue writing music that speaks to life, that speaks about faith, that's practical, that's relatable. I wanted to make music that 10 years from now, I'd still be proud of. And that I'd be proud to even have my kids singing.
Exactly, and say that's my dad. That's my dad's music.
I also wanted to make an investment. I wanted to build a legacy starting now, where I'm creating music that even after I'm gone, the kids, their kids, and the kids after that will be eating the fruit of the seed I planted.
Exactly,
you know what I'm saying? So it's not just about showbiz anymore, or it's not just about a music career. It's really more about a life legacy. And the truth of the matter is that's not always what I'm thinking about, because as a human being, you also tend to get caught up in the rat race and the rabbit hole of pursuing different things to make a quick buck or solve a problem or deal with stuff. But that's the centering thought. That's the thing that brings me back to, hey, remember, this is really where you're going. And so you kind of need to come back, do whatever you need to do to stay on track with this. And this is really the most important thing. Because I also know I'm not going to be, 10 years from now, I'm not going to be competing with the new kids on the block for gigs. What do I want to do? I want to create mentorship spaces, or can I say a place where I can pass on? How can I use my experiences to build a bigger stage for someone who's coming after me? Because that's what it's really about.
That's what it's really all about.
That's what it's really about. It's not about me having a name for myself. That would be fantastic, and I definitely want to have a name for myself. But I would rather my name be synonymous with legacy.
Wow, you're very selfless. But now that we're on the music sort of path, your album Lukundo, hey, that 2016 album for me is the most consequential album that sort of for you as an artist. That's just my perspective. For you, I know you probably haven't worked on your best work yet, because as an artist we're always like, nope, don't put me in that box. Next, I'm and the reason for that is because I've been listening to that. When I knew I was gonna interview you, first I don't like the word interview. When I knew I was gonna have a conversation with you, I've been listening to the album over and over. My favorite jam has always been Aliye Wangu.
Wow, with Della.
I don't know that song that doesn't have an album, and you guys need to go and check it out, because Webi, his runs, his ad libs, his harmonies. I know he directs the harmonies, but the album is called Love.
Yeah,
Lukundo means love. It just feels like love.
Yeah.
Nakulukunda. It just feels like nakukunde. I love you. It just sounds nice.
Right.
That's your third album. First and foremost, it's a great fit because I know a lot of people.
Right.
The people in the industry who don't even have an album.
Right.
And not to beat them down or whatever because everyone's circumstance is different.
Yeah.
But that album felt very intentional.
Yeah.
A lot of Swahili, a lot of, message. There's a song Mao. You're talking about singing about your mom, and now I understand that relationship.
Yes.
There's also a song about brotherhood and about men.
Yeah.
And and you say yes, many effort, but like let's listen to each other. There's all these standards, but let's, brotherhood is important.
Yeah.
There's a song about love, you know, and just how you're trying to navigate love and understand all these things.
Yeah.
There's a lot of intention with that album.
Yes.
Guys, if you've never listened to Lukundo, you please go and pick up that album. Go listen to it on Spotify, Amazon, Boomplay, whatever.
Yeah.
Please go listen to the album and show that album love.
Yeah.
But also, you sing a lot in your native lingua.
Yeah.
So for me, the thing that I want to know, how was the creative process of that album? And why would someone like me who's an artist feel that it's that consequential? Because when people are writing such amazing stuff, hey, a lot of times they are going through everything. So I want to know what was happening when you're writing that album.
Yeah, spot on.
It feels to me like a 2022 album. It could be released anytime.
Again,
What is it about Lukundo that makes me love it that much?
Oh man, authenticity, if I put that in one word. The creative process of it was very interesting. My background and my influences have always been R&B. Growing up, I really loved Boys to Men. They're still my favorite singing group of all time.
Nice.
You can see the
Love
longevity.
It.
So, if you're a 90s kid, you know how R&B looked like and
very
sound
much.
like. You understand how music was like Babyface, Jodeci, a Jagged Edge. Brandy.
Monica. Mary J. Blige.
Whitney.
God.
Mariah Carey.
Lord help us. You don't know what you're missing.
Right? That was an era. That was the era that influenced my love for, lyricism, composition, musicality. And creating music that people 30 years later are sort of rediscovering and they're like, yo, this feels like this was made for now, And the creative process that sort of sparked off where Lukundo got born was I wrote a song called Pamoja Milele. That was the first song that I wrote that ended up becoming one of the songs in the 13-track album that now became Lukundo.
Yes.
And at the time when I was writing that song, I was looking for a song that was different, it sounded more like home. I think that's the best description. And I was also looking for a record deal.
You were like,
I was like, I need someone's money.
They say your rent was due.
The rent was due, and I was singing for food. You know what I'm saying?
The landlord was like, bro, you seem like you don't have food. I'm gonna let you stay in the house for a bit.
Right?
Then mama kiosk is like, ujalipia chakula. I have debts, so I'm gonna make that money.
And this was 7 years This was now 7 years after the release of my second studio album. So it was time for me to get back into the creative process of putting out a body of work. And then again, that's another thing about me that I've always appreciated the value of a body of work. You can have singles and EPs, which is dope. But I feel like there's something about a body of work that really encapsulates life experiences, where you are as an artist, where your growth, and the things that are important to you and how they intersect with the general human experience.
Yes.
So I wrote Pamoja Milele, and then I had this idea to go see RK. Robert Kamanzi.
Yeah.
Big
gosh,
shout out.
my God, that guy is a producer and a half.
I went and sat
One
down
of the
with
best.
I went and sat down with RK and I said, hey, there's this song. Now, originally, Pamoja Milele was a Swahili first verse and an English second verse. And so he listened to the song and he was like, yo, that's a dope song. Okay, now scrap verse 2.
And RK, he will not mince his words. He'll be like, remove it.
Yeah, I know you as an R&B singer. I've had most of your R&B nuances, but now I want you to dig deeper. There's a villager inside of you that needs to come out. And I was like, that's so, wow, fast villager. Why would I want to?
And why does that mean anything?
And he said, you've made music for pretty much everyone else and for yourself and for the people that can appreciate your music on an international landscape.
But now,
what about the people from where you come from? Like, have you ever sung a Taita song? So he told me, go rewrite this song.
Wow.
Go rewrite this song, and you can keep a lot of what is on there, but put in some Taita there. So it was a challenge because I'd never written a Taita.
And I need you to sing for us that Taita verse, please.
I think the verse goes, Kololi mlungu anirasimbia wanineka mdu mchauni kunde iye 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 ngelo ihi namfunyira chapcha kwakose agawani bonyera.
Oh my God, but Webi, your voice. Webi, do you know, I genuinely really love your voice. Like, you know this.
Appreciate it, bro. Yes,
There's
you've told me.
Oh my God, I've got goosebumps. There's a way you do your runs.
My guy.
Me, there's very few male musicians who I genuinely love in Kenya. Not because I'm not trying to act like I'm picky.
Yeah.
I'm not Aretha Franklin.
No, but you have
I can throw names and descriptions about artists.
Right.
No. You genuinely, your voice is very soulful. You sound like someone who has seen it all. You know, because I'm doing this space with you.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna curse.
I know you appreciate.
So I'm really struggling to say you got your together when it comes to your voice, because you genuinely come from a place of I have suffered.
Yeah.
But I'll suffer no more.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to make my suffering drag the music.
Right.
No, I'll make it the sweetness.
Yeah.
So you're very intentional about it.
Yeah.
So now you're on the journey of, you've been told, no.
Rewrite
Sing
the
in
song.
your native lingo.
Yeah.
Do you then for a moment realize, now by the way,
actually, that's exactly what happened.
Why haven't I been doing this? Why?
That's exactly the sort of question that set me on the path of discovery for what does the villager in me sound like?
Yeah.
And what does it look like to actually represent that side of my identity, right? And of course there was so much richness, or can I say so much wealth to tap into. So fast forward, I write this song, I go back to RK, and it's like, that's it, let's work on the thing.
Yeah.
So we recorded Pamoja Milele, and it was going to be a single.
Wow.
At that point, I was thinking album, but it was going to be predicated on, can I get a record deal so that I can get support to do it? Because, of course, an album is cost intensive.
It's not cheap.
It's a very heavy project to undertake as an independent artist, and I wasn't.
And you can't be earning money on the side, to be honest.
Yeah,
because you're literally spending all your time spending money, not earning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because I knew I needed to be able to give it the focus it deserved, and to create something that showcased growth from the last record to where I was at, and also be able to find the intersection between being able to pour out everything that life had presented me through an art form, through the music. I needed to be able to give it its time.
Yeah.
So I actually went to Arcade, one, to present this song, but also to ask him to sign me.
Exactly.
At that time, I don't know if he still does it now, but he was running Moja Entertainment, and he had supported a bunch of artists, Victor Mbuvi, Jemima Thiongo.
Exactly.
His signature is on pretty much every other big hit in Kenyan music right now.
True.
And I felt like he was the guy who would help me find a voice for this next season of my life. And I also wanted to learn from, what does it take to make a great hit song? It's one thing to just write a song that you like.
Yep.
It's another thing to make a song that people are like, I hear myself in that song.
Yeah.
And I want to be...
That's deep.
You know what I'm saying?
It's not easy at all.
Yeah.
And RK will call you out and tell you, nope.
Yeah.
Like for me, when it is just Jeff Kamusho with him, he told me, you school with BN, go get BN and write this song together.
Yeah.
I mean, when you hear him, what happens is when he lays down the foundation, he's a very good father. He walks away. He let you now with the engineers, but he's left you there knowing I've already guided you.
There's true north.
Thank you. So there's no now looking for the compass point. You already know exactly what to do. And
he simplified the process, also because, being a musician, I really love the technicalities of chord changes and this, that. And he was like, that's nice, but true musicianship...
Yeah, by the way...
one of the things he said was, true musicianship is knowing when and when not to use that.
He told me that. He told me, listen, you're going to do a high note at the end of the song.
Yeah.
From verse 1, I don't want to hear any of those runs.
Yeah, keep it straight, keep it simple. And you're like, but it's not going to impress guys.
For him,
we're like, do you want a song that makes money or the song that's impressive?
So we don't be played on radio. I'm on a try to kujisikia kwa nyumba. I was like, guy.
Yeah.
Hey, okay.
Hard hitting truths.
Yeah, let me just do it.
And I love that he really challenged my artistry and myself and my perspective.
Yeah.
And he put me on the path of discovering a version of myself I didn't even know existed. It was just latent there. And so what led into the Lukundo album was he took that song and he went and played it for Peter Ndwati, then CEO of
Pine Creek.
Yeah, Pine Creek. I think he still owns Pine Creek now.
Yeah.
And so Peter listened to the song, he loved the song. He was like, let's consider this.
Yeah.
Fast forward, I'm sitting with Peter Ndwati. We're talking about, working out a project and him signing me as one of the artists on Pine Creek Records. Around the same time you were there.
That was the same time, yeah.
Around the same time we were there, so we were label mates.
Yeah.
But then now it became, all right, let's do this song, let's do a video, let's start to build an album that sounds a lot like this, but it needs to stretch. There are very many different angles, there are moving parts that we can put together here to make a body of work that people will listen to for a long time to come. So I went to work.
Yeah.
So now I have, thankfully, the blessing and the guarantee of support from a financial perspective.
Yeah.
I have the right producer and I have the opportunity now to create. So they're doing their part. I needed to put
all
my
I
name.
need to just
So the Lukundo album became an album that was the all-encompassing conversation of love for me at the time, because I also wanted to express the different facets of love. So like you very rightly put it, there was the love, the romantic aspect of it. There was love of self. There's a song called Jipende.
Yes.
There was the love of money and what the love of pursuing after, physical
song,
it's called Pesa. So what that looks like, and I told it through story form. I sang about my mom, and my appreciation was an ode to her sacrifice and her strength and her consistency and who I am today as a result of all that she put in, the foundation that she laid for me. And also there was romantic love songs. I mean, I was also singing from the context of now I'm in a committed relationship and I'm with someone who inspires me, and I wanted to sort of pay homage or homage, depending on where you come from, to that. And I also wanted to express love in a way that is immortalized. And then I also sang, stories. I sang about my faith, a song called Baba Yetu. I took the Lord's Prayer.
Took the Lord's Prayer and you sang it in a very nice melody. So in fact, Jana, before I slept, I was listening to it and I was like, this should be the song we should be singing in schools.
Because when I was a kid growing up, my grandparents, my granddad especially, was very intentional about teaching me how to pray the Lord's Prayer. So I actually learned how to pray the Lord's Prayer in Kitaita before I even learned it in Swahili and English.
Wow.
So I was like, that was my ode to him, but also an expression of, I have had many different versions of this song from different people, and many people have been daring enough to do it even in their language. But I have never had a Taita one. So that was an opportunity.
So it was also an eye-opening moment for you, or literally an ear-opening, because you're like, I'm also underrepresented as a culture. My culture is underrepresented.
Exactly.
We need to put ourselves. So when someone hears this in 30 years, they're like, what language is that? They're like, it's Taita. Like someone random Luo in Arizona is like, this is Taita, because it represents a culture that he has been able to interact with because of you.
Absolutely.
Was that whole album recording process? Because a lot of times we also tend to, without even realizing, do you feel there's a lot of love while you're recording the album, to a point where even the name just made sense, apart from the content in the album, but the ecosystem that allowed you to create this album? Was there a lot of love in that whole scenario?
There was, and I think it's twofold. There was the context of where I was at and my experiences and the things that were going on at the time, but then there was also the extension of it, which is the other side of this, the other perspective of it, which was looking at my external relationships. I was looking at life from the perspective of other people's experiences. I was looking at marriage, for instance. I mean, I had been at a wedding at some point during one of the times as I was writing the album. I'd been at a wedding where I was singing, and there was a couple that had been married there for like 40 years.
Wow.
And I was like, man, that was way older than I was at the time. Like these guys have been married longer than I've been alive.
You've been alive,
And I started to ask myself, what does that look like? What does it take to get to a place like that? And will I make it there? And so that sort of sparked an idea for a song called Tusibadilike in the record, which for this one, I even took a very different writing approach. I went to CBN. And so we actually wrote that song together with BN. I don't know if he remembers, because that was quite a while ago, 2014, 2015, thereabouts.
BN and that big head, he'll probably remember.
We wrote Tusibadilike together. And the song really revolved around, what I believed sort of made for the ingredients of a successful relationship, loving one another, caring for one another, preferring one another, choosing one another, which is really, really important. Side note, a lot of relationships that break apart because of one thing. People just stop choosing each other.
Oh, wow.
We can always say money is a reason for divorce. No, it's not. It's just one of the things that triggers a downward spiral to a problem that existed before you had problems with money, which is this.
It's a catalyst. You have always been like this.
Because if I choose someone, if I choose my wife, then that means conversations about the different facets of our relationship are a priority. It means dating her is a priority. It means investing in my relationship is a priority. It means being honest and being open and being integrous is a priority. And these are all the things that come together to give us our relationship a fighting chance, because we are imperfect. Yes, we will make mistakes, but the chances that our relationship will survive are based on the foundation that we've built in our relationship, where we're choosing each other, so we can navigate through, even if it is the onslaught of divorce or all our friends are divorcing. Does that mean we're also going to be, that kind of a thing?
So I'm not, or I won't even get into a relationship, because I mean, look at everyone in my age. Look at everyone is divorcing because you constantly choose you.
Yeah,
it's fine. I've never seen like that, because the concept of I. Well, we are a we. It's not I, me.
And it's oneness. Really, the truth of the matter is, if you've decided you're going to be with this person, that is, of course, the first choice. But many of us stop at that choice, and it becomes about us. I want to be with somebody who makes me happy. I want to be with somebody who does this. That's a very immature perspective. I've come to appreciate, because a relationship of that magnitude is about giving. It's actually about giving. You're making the decision to be selfless, to sacrifice. And for the guys, the ante is very high.
Exactly.
The expectation is really high.
Yeah.
And so when we make it about ourselves, which is essentially making a choice to only prefer yourself, not the other person, a bunch of things happen. And from what that couple I was referencing were talking about, those are some of the things they said. We decided that we were not going to change how we see each other.
Yes.
And we're going to learn about each other. I'm going to be a student of my relationship. And I'm going to keep on doing this thing every single day, rain or shine, which is why on the wedding day, the vows are, I choose you for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health till death do us part. You're not making a commitment to a situation, you're making a commitment to a person. So that sort of became, those were the thoughts that were going through my head as I was writing the song Tusibadilike. And all of those songs became part of the love that we were talking about. You asked me the question about whether there was love happening in that moment. Yes. So there was my personal experience and the things that have gone on in my life, but then there was also the extended experience that I was borrowing.
Do you see what happens when you're intentional?
Yeah.
You would have gone to the wedding and you wouldn't have cared about these old guys. I'd be like, these ones are just, good luck to them.
Yeah.
But because you are intentional about being a sponge, you're sieving or a sieve, you're taking what's good and you're like, let me learn, let me drink from this cup.
Right.
And understand why, how can they last this long?
Absolutely.
Well, for other guys are probably thinking, I'm waiting for this stand-up party. When are we drinking? But you're being very intentional as you're creating.
Yeah.
And really to bring us back to the point of, you remove yourself from comfort and decide, let me be uncomfortable. Let me create an album, a body of work that not only represents me now, but me for a very long time. And I need also people to understand that, one, it is not easy.
No. Oh, wow.
It's not easy. It's difficult.
I wrote a song for my kids, bro. And to do that, sorry to cut you short.
Yeah, it's okay.
But you've reminded me that when you say it's not easy, that sometimes you actually have to be uncomfortable to find the gold. Like to write this song, it's called Mshuma, Candle. I was writing my thoughts sort of in a prophetic way about what I believed about my kids. At that time, I only had one child, so my second born wasn't born yet. But I was saying, utanga utawaka kama mshuma. Jua nakupenda, ombi langu kila siku ni lafanaka. I pray for your success. I pray that you become a person of integrity. I desire to see you succeed in life and be the version of yourself that you are meant to be, and things like that. To write that song, I had to go to a different environment. Like I wasn't even in my house. I went to a spot in Lukenya, out in the wild. Well, it's just me and the car and my guitar and a notepad and a bit of writer's block. And I knew I wanted to write something that my kids will listen to when they are 20 and they'll be like, I know exactly what my dad hopes for me. Hoped for me.
Yes.
And to know that it is still true today.
And
it can be like a guiding light for
my own
me.
kids.
Exactly. So I sat there for a couple of hours until I had the song. I didn't leave that spot until I finished that song. Because I was also writing to the child in me. This is what I wanted my dad to speak to me. This is what I wanted to hear growing up. So now, because I didn't get it, I understand, I can empathize, and I can understand why it's so important and so significant for me to be able to pass that forward. It wasn't passed to me, but I can create it and pass it forward. So that intentionality you're talking about, that was really the driving force that made me a student of my experiences and the circumstances in my life and beyond my life. Let me put it that way. And so the result of that was now this entire album. I mean, there's stories to be told even about how I ended up writing with Della.
Yeah.
And how we wrote,
song.
Aliye Wangu,
Wow, that song is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that song is you don't understand. And then when you guys pull that I've forgotten the name of the guy, that Whitney Houston and that Michael, some guy. Could I have this love? Could I have this
George
love?
Michael.
George Michael moment.
Yeah.
You guys, I was like, I was imagining, like, are you guys, like, are you singing together? Did you sing in different studios? Because for me, it became the image just came out. I was like, this was real.
We were
like,
together.
The both of them, you probably stopped yourself like, okay, now, this song will be too long now, we need to stop.
Yeah.
Because it felt too real.
Yeah.
And I feel like, and that's why I keep saying, I come back to you, like, very intentional.
Yeah.
And also, something else I want you to delve in. People love to use this word love. We love those. That's why I'm telling you, when I hear you sing,
about
I'm
love.
like, he's real. He's not lying. I can feel it. This guy was in a moment here.
Yeah.
People love to misuse the word love.
Yeah, and I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah, we like saying, wewe mimi nakupenda sana, I'll make sure.
Yeah.
No, bro, you're lying.
Love is a sentence.
Love is a sentence. You want me now. You want to use me now.
Yeah. So even
Vunja yote.
So even when I was writing the song, when we were doing the song with Della, we were together in the studio, and one of the guiding things throughout the theme of the album, I think when you listen to it, you'll hear that there's that authenticity, there's that rawness. Another thing that was driving it was, what is love? Mm-hmm. And yes, we're talking about the different facets of it, but what's the basis of it? The basis of it was faith.
Yeah.
So you've rightly put it when we say how we sort of I think the word here is we've diluted the meaning of love. Huh? We've diluted the meaning of love to make it sound more like a feeling than a way of life, And so I wanted to talk about love in sort of like a contrary way to what we've come to believe as love, because of what's also been sold to us in popular culture. Love sounds like a nice, good song. It sounds like the things you've had Brian McKnight say, or Boys to Men. The truth is, that's just one expression of it, and that's really more the romantic part of it. But the truth of the matter is, love is a choice. Love is actually a doing word. It's a verb. It's something that you do every single day.
It's not this consonant where you just add it into a conversation like
real talk. I mean, from a marriage perspective, because I'm married and I can tell you this, right? It's not every single day that in my marriage everything is nice and dandy. There are times when we argue. There are times when we have a very strong difference of opinion and we have a heated circumstance. There are times when you look at the person you're with and you're asking yourself, why do I love this person?
Exactly.
And that's a good question to ask, because you're not being spiteful or hateful. Maybe in the heat of the moment you're feeling mad at them. But the reason that that's a good question is because it comes down to why this person, why do I value this person? What am I putting into this relationship and why am I putting it into that? It's really more from, what is God's idea of love? What was it meant to be? Again, because I'm a believer, these are some of the things that also really help me filter through everything that I do and why it's important. So, I mean, I'm coming from a place where we've heard about love being going to the club, meeting someone, having fun with them, a one-night stand, and you can't stop thinking about them. That's an experience. That's something that happened. That's not love. The other thing is, love is also, we use the word love when what we're talking about is infatuation. You can be infatuated by something or someone. But love is a very different story because it's about a series of decisions that add up. Love is about making choices, and it's also about sacrifice. Because I love my person, I'm going to do something that demonstrates that love. And where I get that from really is when you look at the Bible, for God so loved the world. That's a scripture we all know. For God so loved the world that he gave. You see, love was demonstrated.
Not traded or like...
No, not negotiated, not contract. It was a giving. And he was giving before any of us had anything to offer in return. Not that we even had anything to offer in return. So when you think about that, when you sit with it long enough, you begin to realize, and ask, how am I demonstrating love? What does love look like in the context of my relationship? Whether you're dating, whether you're raising children, whether it's with yourself, whether it is with a marriage, in the context of a marriage, whether it is with people you're in the office with or on a field trip with or whatever, because we are relational beings and we're constantly interacting with people. And love wears a face in all of those situations. What does it really look like? And you see, it's nice to have a nice pop song that talks about love and we feel good when we hear it. But once the song stops I can't take that with me. Like, okay, what it was nice while it lasted, and on to the next song.
Yeah.
But how do I apply that? Maybe it's just me who overthinks it.
Exactly, yeah.
But I realized I didn't just want to be simplistic about things that have existed before me and that have a much bigger meaning than what I'm whittling it down to, because I'm trying to have a pop hit.
Yeah, for me also, I take that word very seriously.
Yeah.
It's like I have friends who, you know how girls call each other babe? I have friends who are girls who they don't allow people to call them babe.
Yeah.
They're like, don't throw that word has a lot of meaning. I mean, you can give me a kidney. You can, and not to mean that it has to be transactional.
Of course.
But like, you really don't use words because you want to get something out of someone,
right,
or you want to make them feel something.
Yeah.
Don't throw these consequential words because you want inconsequential things just to fulfill something for yourself.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about one night stands.
Yeah.
You love sex, you love reckless behavior.
Yeah.
You don't love the people you sleep with. Stop waking up and deciding you didn't call me, but I loved you. And
there's also such a thing as people saying I love you when the truth is they actually loved the idea of you.
Thank
or they
you.
loved the idea of what they were going to get out of being with you.
Thank you. Or they love the idea of controlling you. Like,
exactly,
if I could be this person, this is what I would want from them.
You feed
and
my
probably
ego.
you are thank you. The things you tell me, you flirt with me.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very, and it's but I also feel like when you come from a place like the both of us are come from, where it's a sort of not a broken home, but from a broken background. These things mean a lot.
They do.
We don't throw these words where.
You
just wake up and you say no. We're like no. We don't play those words like that. So we are very intentional.
Exactly.
I mean, as we wind up, I want you to because I was about to ask you about what it means to be independent vis-a-vis being signed, but now that has morphed into, after all those experiences and everything you've gone through, from the being signed to fighting for yourself, having 3 albums, all the lessons you've learned, being a dad, being a teacher, and when you look forward into the future and how you're molding it for yourself, how does that look like for you? What do you want us, or how do you want us to see the world? How do you want us to be in the world that you sort of are creating for yourself? In terms of like, for me, I think of, I just want nicer, kinder people. I really wish people were just nicer to each other, or kinder.
Yeah.
We would, and here it goes all the way to like policy makers, to government people. If you're a bit kinder, we don't have a scenario where somebody who's a senator now was paid $2 billion for a plot of land to have a dam that till today is a shrub. If you had love,
absolutely,
imagine that money. See, you are paid. You'd have given that land. You'd have built the dam. People in northeastern Kenya would not have been dying. So that's the world I envision, where we are a bit kinder, nicer, empathetic. My God.
I connect with all of that, and that's a very big question with a lot of moving parts, but it all has one answer. I truly believe that a good portion of the world's problems, the answer to it or the solution to those is love. In the professional space, love looks like ethics. Being ethical in our decisions, being ethical in our business practices, being ethical in how we treat our employees or our co-workers and so on and so forth. Being ethical in government, in leadership. Being ethical in the policies that we set, in the laws that we're making to govern our land, in how we collect and manage taxes, being ethical in how we represent the people that have given us the opportunity to be their voice in parliament and so on and so forth. In social circles, it's being mindful. I love what you said about how if we could be kinder to one another, things would be significantly better. That's absolutely true. And I think it all, because of my belief, I think it all goes back down to God's idea for how our human existence was meant to be. Because the second most significant, the second most powerful and most important commandment is love your neighbor as you love yourself. If I love you, I'm not going to go out of my way to hurt you. And if I can help you, I'll go out of my way to do so. If I can do something that gives you a leg up, an advantage, a fighting chance, an opportunity to win, then my life is supposed to be about making that happen for you. Because again, there's also another scripture that says, give and it shall come back to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, shall men give into your bosom. So whatever it is you're giving away, it'll come back, it'll come back much more.
And also remember, it's good and bad.
Absolutely.
As you're giving bad energy, bad vibes, you will get it right back.
Precisely.
You will get it.
So imagine a world where we all made the decision to say, I'm going to sow one good thing into life today, whether that's an encouraging word, whether that's kindness, whether that's doing something without expecting a payment or some sort of reciprocity, compensatory in that way, whether it's going out of your way to do something for someone that will increase their chances of having a better day than they would have if you didn't do what you did because you were in a position where you could do that. That's the kind of world I envision, and I believe it is possible despite how broken things are right now. And that also sort of impacts how I'm raising my kids, because I'm teaching them to be those people. Regardless of whether the people they are with are not like that, they are going to be like that because one is
and they will end up meeting people who are like that because they are moving intentionally.
Yeah, and you can't fight evil with evil. Good trumps evil any single day. And that's what you want for the world of tomorrow, which, by the way, is already starting to show up today. And how that intersects with my music is I really want to be able to keep making music that promotes those values, because I really believe that those values, number one, are ageless. They're timeless, if I can say that. We're never going to overemphasize or run out of the importance of being able to talk about a world where there's love, there's cohesiveness, there's understanding, there's kindness, there's faith, there's giving, there's receiving, but there's also making sure you're not receiving to hoard, you're receiving to pass forward. I want to make music that will be, like when you think about Bob Marley's music, when you think about even Michael Jackson's music, some of the greats of the old times, and they're not even that old. The music is not that old, really. When you think about some of the things they believed in social justice, for example. Bob Marley believed in a fair society. He was like a philosopher in that way. And he channeled his philosophy in his music. And there are so many others like that. And today we listen to that music. I mean, he passed on 40 years ago almost. But a lot of the things, the ideals and the ideologies that he was speaking about in his music and the stories he was telling, they are there today.
Timeless.
Exactly. The context of that is still there today. We can still see the connection between what he was saying and our everyday experience. I want to make music that speaks into life but gives practical wisdom, or gives a practical account of, hey, for example, my new song, A Long Way, which is one I released a couple of months ago. It's a reflective song that talks about journeys, really everyone else's journey, but I was writing it from my perspective. I'm looking at when I started the music, my journey as a musician 20 years ago, and I'm thinking, my goodness, there's so much that's happened. What have I learned over the years about myself? What have I learned about the world? Of course, the song is 3 minutes, 30 seconds, and I can't compress everything I've learned in 20 years.
That's the gift that was given by God.
Absolutely.
That you can put your 20 years in 3 minutes, and it will help somebody else deal with their 20 years to come.
And that's, the song was really more like, I think of it more as a conversation starter with self, with others, where people can begin to think, really, what has the last 20 years of my life been like?
Exactly.
And somebody 20 years from now will still be looking back and thinking, what did I learn? Who have I become? What did I pass forward? What mistakes did I make? And what came out of that? And so, being independent versus being signed, it really doesn't matter, to be honest, as long as I'm able to stay true to that, because that is at the core of who I am as a person and therefore as an artist. But of course, my preference now is being an independent artist, and I am investing heavily in being able to be a producer. So I'm actually learning to produce music. I'm sort of creating room for myself to have expression that is not limited by when I'm able to go to a studio. I'm building a studio at home. So that's where I record my music. That's now where I'm beginning to produce songs. I'm working on some new music right now, so that's going to come out possibly over the next few months before the end of 2023.
I hope another album is on the way.
Definitely in the works.
So not a long way down, a short way down. See what I did there?
It's also where I produce my podcast. Interestingly, your podcast and mine have a very similar name.
Because often Unlock Your Soul.
Unlock Your Soul. Mine is called Soulfire Inspiration.
I knew it. Because I know you've always mentioned the word soul in you. Even your email.
Exactly. Soulfire Inspiration. And so that's a very long-winded answer just to say that because that's what I believe about the world and the environment that I hope to see one day, even if I don't live to see it, I want to have been part of whatever sets that in motion, so that the generation after me and their generations after them experience it. So legacy.
Wow.
I'm just about 40 now. So I'm thinking legacy now when I should have been thinking about
you're like 40 with like 60 years of experience. My God, this guy has suffered. And in a good way.
I have learned, I've experienced
life.
Guys,
if you're in the diaspora, when we say suffer, we don't mean like living in the streets. And I'm not taking away from those people's experiences. But in suffering means I have seen everything. You cannot lie to me.
I've experienced enough to give me some
40-year-olds in Africa are like 80.
That's true.
We have seen everything.
Especially our generation,
We know everything. millennials, we have seen everything.
Yeah.
You are such
So
a
that's what I
breath of
believe in.
fresh air.
Yeah. Thank you, bro.
It is so lovely talking to you. I mean, I could listen to you speak every single day, and please make sure you also go and catch his podcast, which is Soul and Fire.
Soul Fire Inspiration.
Soul Fire Inspiration. Hey,
yeah.
it's Sophie, Soul Fire.
Yeah, Soul Fire.
So that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I get to share this space with you, but
Absolutely.
also I get to learn from you.
Yeah.
But also I get to understand you more, because I feel there's questions I always wanted to ask you, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to seem intrusive. You just
we're
wake
friends,
up and
bro.
No, I know, but you wake up and show someone. By the way, it
Yeah.
just feels like I was gossiping you,
Yeah.
and now let me give the people the story. Guys, this is what he told me.
Yeah.
So I feel very inspired.
Yeah, thank you.
You're very insightful, and I do pray that you will continue to share this insight with people, and that and may you never lack.
I appreciate
you
that, bro.
genuinely, you are a well of a lot of wisdom. So thank you so much, Mr. Soul Fire.
Mr. Unlock Your Soul.
You
appreciate
see
you.
that
Ilikuwa ni akilo.
but in our culture, we're African.
Absolutely.
It means it really came from a deep place.
It was heartfelt. Yeah,
it was genuine.
It comes with interest and investment.
Genuine. So trust me, make sure you go catch Webi's new jam called A Long Way.
Yeah.
But also, please take it away back. Take it go a little bit back and get to listen to some of his albums. But my favorite is Lukundo, which means love.
Yeah.
Please listen to every track from the beginning to the end.
Yeah.
I promise you'll not only fall in love with Webi, but you will fall in love with his music, which is so intentional. Thank you so much.
I appreciate
and
you,
my
my
love
brother.
to your wife and the kids.
Absolutely.
That's what's up.
Thank you, my man.
Bye. Well, I do hope that conversation allows you to delve deeper into the fact that you can be able to achieve anything that you put your mind, heart, and soul into. And if you're a parent or planning to be a parent, I truly hope that you will be a beacon of light to your young ones. Definitely an amazing conversation with Webi as we continue to scratch beneath the surface to find out what really makes us human. We get into an interesting conversation next week with somebody who's also quite close to their mom, and incidentally, they also are in the same industry. I'm talking about the very bubbly Makena Kahuha. That's coming up next week. So, yeah. As we get ready for the snippet, remember to follow us on Instagram at Unlock Your Soul Pod. Subscribe, like, share, comment on our YouTube at Unlock Your Soul Podcast, and go to TikTok at Unlock Your Soul Podcast. And yeah, here is a snippet with Makena Kahuha.
But also during my teenagehood and when I was just finishing school, I can be a bit rebellious.
Yeah,
so,
you are like, now is my time.
So my mom had to make it clear that she's the adult. I have to
toe the line.
I have to, like, before I can give you your freedom, you have to earn it. And my mom used to say, trust is earned. Trust is earned. So if you want me to trust you, give me a reason. Show me you can take care of yourself. And my mom tested me throughout my high school. I'd be like, okay, I never lied to my mom. I'm like, by the way, mom, I'm going for this event. Where is it? Winning Post. What's the name of event? Battle of the Bands or whatever it was. So be like, who'll be there? I'll be with my high school friends. She'll be like, Sawa, give me their numbers. I'm not going to call them, but if you don't pick,
I'm gonna call them.
I'm going to call them. She'll be like, you'll be here at what time? I'll be here at 6. Like, you're leaving the house at? I'm leaving at 11. Okay. Do you think you're going to drink alcohol? No. Like, what are you going to drink? Monster. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Aki. And by the way, I would be late sometimes and be like, by the way, mom, I'm running late. I think I'll be there at 7.